In the remote hush of wild country, something ancient waits, massive, unseen, and merciless. It doesn't stalk with stealth but barrels through underbrush like a storm with teeth. One moment stillness, the next chaos laced with snarls and shattered bone. Conversations halt mid-sentence. Trails vanish beneath thundering power. Survivors speak in fragments. Some never speak again. The wilderness has a rhythm, and those who know don't linger when it falters. Because when the woods cry out, it isn't your voice bouncing back. It's something older, hungrier, and it's already too close. Deep within the rugged wilderness of Kodiak Island, Alaska, a region renowned for hosting the largest brown bears in the world, an extraordinary encounter occurred in the summer of 2018 that would challenge even the most experienced wildlife experts' understanding of these magnificent creatures. With its lush forests, salmon-filled streams, and relative isolation from mainland Alaska, Kodiak Island had long served as a sanctuary for a thriving population of Kodiak bears, a subspecies of brown bear known for their impressive size. During what had begun as a routine wildlife survey in the island's northeastern sector, a team of 4 forest rangers led by Senior Ranger Tobias McAllister ventured into a remote valley seldom visited by humans. The area had been flagged for assessment due to unusual wildlife movement patterns detected by satellite tracking. The team, consisting of McAllister, Junior Rangers Priya Sharma and Esteban Rodriguez, and wildlife photographer Annika Johansson, had expected to document typical bear activity and perhaps spot a few specimens at a distance. What they encountered, however, defied all expectations. As the team navigated through a dense thicket of alders near a small tributary creek, they suddenly froze at the sound of heavy movement ahead. Emerging from the foliage was a Kodiak bear of unprecedented proportions. Standing nearly 12 feet tall on its hind legs and estimated to weigh approximately 1,800 pounds, the bear dwarfed any specimen previously documented in the region. The rangers reported that their initial reaction was complete disbelief. Sharma later noted that the bear's head appeared to be the size of a standard office desk, with paws that could easily crush a human skull with minimal effort. The team's extensive training momentarily abandoned them as they stood paralyzed by fear and awe. The situation escalated when the massive bear, seemingly startled by the human intrusion, charged toward the group. McAllister, with 15 years of wilderness experience, instructed the team to stand perfectly still rather than flee, knowing that running would likely trigger the bear's predatory instincts. Their heart rates spiked dangerously as the enormous creature closed the distance between them in mere seconds, its thunderous footfalls shaking the ground beneath them. Remarkably, the bear halted its charge just 10 feet from the group. Rising to its full height, it towered over them, its breath visible in the cool Alaskan air. For what the rangers described as the longest 45 seconds of their lives, the bear held its imposing stance, appearing to study the humans with unmistakable intelligence. Rodriguez would later remark that he had never felt so completely insignificant in his entire career, likening the experience to standing before a living mountain. Just as mysteriously as it had appeared, the bear slowly lowered itself to all fours and retreated backward into the forest, maintaining eye contact with the rangers until it disappeared into the undergrowth. The team stood motionless for several minutes afterward, processing what had just occurred. Upon returning to base camp, the rangers immediately reported their encounter. Within 48 hours, a specialized team of wildlife biologists led by Dr. Helena Volkova from an Alaska university arrived to investigate. Using the photographic evidence captured by Johansson during the encounter, initial analysis suggested that this particular bear might represent an anomaly in the species' development. Dr. Volkova's team set up observation stations and specialized tracking equipment throughout the area, hoping to gather more data on the exceptional specimen. Preliminary theories suggested several possible explanations for the bear's extraordinary size: uniquely favorable genetics, an unusual abundance of food resources in its territory, or potentially advanced age combined with a lifetime free from significant injuries or competition. The discovery prompted a reconsideration of the upper size limits previously established for Kodiak bears. Most adult males typically weighed between 800 and 1,500 pounds, making this individual a significant outlier. The team collected hair samples from trees where the bear had rubbed, hoping to extract DNA for further study. For McAllister and his team, the encounter fundamentally altered their approach to wildlife management in the region. Additional safety protocols were implemented for rangers operating in the area, and civilian hiking permits were temporarily restricted in the northeastern sector of the island. The incident also sparked renewed interest in bear conservation efforts. As Rodriguez observed in his field report, the existence of such a magnificent creature emphasized the importance of preserving these wilderness areas from encroaching development and climate-related threats. 1 year after the encounter, limited evidence suggested that the bear continued to thrive in its territory. Multiple motion-activated cameras occasionally captured images of the massive bear, though always at a distance. The research team noted that it appeared to maintain a larger-than-typical territory and demonstrated unusual intelligence in avoiding human contact. The giant Kodiak bear of 2018 remained a powerful reminder of nature's capacity to inspire fear and reverence, a living testament to the wild grandeur still in Alaska's remote wilderness. In the dense, misty forests of British Columbia's Selkirk Mountains, an area known for its pristine wilderness and abundant wildlife, a hunting expedition turned tragic in October 2013. The remote region, characterized by thick underbrush, towering conifers, and rugged terrain, had long been favored by experienced hunters seeking elk and deer during the fall season. This area had also experienced increasing bear activity due to declining salmon runs in nearby rivers, forcing the predators to range farther for food before winter hibernation. Christopher "Chris" Blackwood, a 42-year-old veteran hunter with over 2 decades of wilderness experience, had ventured deep into this territory accompanied only by his 6-year-old German shepherd, Scout. Blackwood had raised Scout from a puppy, training him for hunting expeditions. The bond between them was exceptional, with Scout having saved Blackwood from potential danger on several previous occasions by alerting him to nearby predators. On that fateful morning, Blackwood and Scout had been tracking a small elk herd for approximately 3 hours, moving quietly through a particularly dense section of forest. The weather had turned unseasonably cold, with frost clinging to the underbrush and their breath forming clouds in the chilled air. According to Blackwood's later account, Scout had shown signs of unease for nearly 20 minutes before the incident, repeatedly stopping to sniff the air and whining softly. Blackwood admitted that he had dismissed these warnings, assuming Scout had detected the elk they were pursuing. This misinterpretation would prove catastrophic within moments. As they navigated around a large fallen cedar, a massive grizzly bear erupted from a dense thicket less than 15 yards away. The bear, later estimated to weigh nearly 700 pounds, had likely been feeding on a cached elk carcass hidden in the brush. The grizzly's initial focus fell immediately on Scout, perhaps perceiving the dog as a competing predator threatening its food cache. Before Blackwood could raise his rifle or issue a command, the bear lunged forward with surprising speed, covering the distance between them in seconds. Displaying the protective instinct he had been trained for, Scout moved to position himself between the bear and his master. The bear seized Scout in its massive jaws, clamping down on the dog's neck and shoulder. Scout's agonized yelp echoed through the forest as Blackwood screamed in horror, instinctively rushing forward to save his companion. Further enraged by Blackwood's approach, the bear dropped the severely injured dog and redirected its aggression toward the hunter. With a powerful swipe of its paw, the grizzly struck Blackwood across the chest and face, sending him crashing backward onto the forest floor. The bear's claws tore through his heavy hunting jacket and left deep lacerations across his torso. Blackwood later recalled experiencing a moment of absolute clarity despite the terror, knowing that his survival depended on immediate action. As the bear advanced toward him, Blackwood withdrew the hunting knife sheathed at his belt, a 7-inch fixed-blade gift from his father. When the grizzly loomed over him, its massive head blocking out the filtered sunlight from above, Blackwood thrust the knife upward with all his strength, striking at the bear's neck and chest. The ensuing struggle lasted less than a minute, but would forever be seared into Blackwood's memory. He described fighting with desperate intensity, slashing at the bear's face and forelimbs as its crushing weight pressed down upon him. The knife connected several times, causing the bear to rear back in pain and confusion. This momentary respite allowed Blackwood to roll sideways and scramble toward his fallen rifle. The bear, now bleeding from multiple wounds, seemed to reassess the situation. After a brief standoff, during which Blackwood managed to grip his weapon, but found himself unable to aim properly due to his injuries, the grizzly retreated into the underbrush, leaving an eerie silence in the forest clearing. Blackwood immediately turned his attention to Scout, but the loyal dog had already succumbed to his catastrophic injuries. The moment of recognition that his faithful companion of 6 years was gone would later be described by Blackwood as more painful than his physical wounds. Despite suffering from blood loss, shock, and 3 broken ribs, Blackwood managed to navigate back toward the logging road where he had parked his truck nearly 4 miles away. The journey took over 5 hours as he periodically lost consciousness. A pair of hikers eventually discovered him, and they helped transport him to the nearest medical facility. Following the incident, provincial wildlife authorities tracked and located the wounded bear, which was subsequently euthanized due to concerns it might become more aggressive toward humans after the encounter. Examination revealed that the bear was an older male suffering from dental abscesses, which likely contributed to its unusually aggressive behavior. For Blackwood, recovery was both physical and emotional. The attack left him with permanent scarring across his chest and face, but the loss of Scout affected him more profoundly. 6 months after the incident, Blackwood established the Scout Safety Initiative, an educational program designed to train hunters and outdoor enthusiasts about bear safety protocols. Through this program, Blackwood hoped to prevent similar tragedies while honoring the memory of the companion who had given his life to protect his master. In the remote southeastern region of Russia's Amur Oblast, where dense taiga forests meet the rugged foothills of the Bureya Mountains, a sporting event turned into a horror scene during the summer of 2009. The area, known for its breathtaking natural beauty and abundant wildlife, had been selected for the inaugural Kingan Mountain Marathon. It was designed to showcase the wilderness and attract international tourism to this sparsely populated territory. The Amur Oblast, sharing a border with China and home to endangered Siberian tigers and Himalayan bears, had experienced growing economic interest as Russian officials sought to develop its ecotourism potential. The marathon route had been carefully planned to wind through some of the region's most scenic areas while remaining within zones considered safe for human activities, avoiding known wildlife corridors and denning sites. On July 12, 2009, approximately 84 participants from 12 countries gathered at the starting line near the small town of Arcara. The weather conditions were ideal. Clear skies with temperatures around 21 degrees Celsius. Race officials stationed supply points every 5 kilometers along the 42-kilometer route, and safety personnel monitored the course. Irina Morozova, a 38-year-old financial analyst from Moscow with considerable experience in wilderness marathons, had positioned herself in the middle of the pack. Having completed similar events in Siberia and the Ural Mountains, Morozova had developed a reputation among fellow runners as a knowledgeable outdoors woman. Nearby ran Dmitry Kuznetsov, a 45-year-old physician from St. Petersburg participating in his first wilderness marathon. The initial stages of the race proceeded without incident. The lead runners had already passed the halfway point when the situation turned catastrophic. At approximately 11:37 a.m., as Morozova and Kuznetsov were navigating a section of the course that passed through a particularly dense stretch of forest, a large brown bear, later identified as a Ussuri brown bear, a subspecies of the grizzly, emerged suddenly from the underbrush. According to subsequent accounts from survivors, the bear appeared agitated and disoriented. Wildlife experts would later theorize that the unusual concentration of human activity and noise had likely disturbed the bear from its daytime resting place, triggering a defensive response. The animal, estimated to weigh approximately 350 kilograms, 770 pounds, charged directly toward the runners. The group immediately scattered in panic. Most participants veered off the trail into the forest or sprinted ahead to safety. Morozova stumbled on an exposed tree root while attempting to flee. The bear reached her within seconds, knocking her violently to the ground with a powerful swipe of its foreleg. Kuznetsov, displaying remarkable courage, attempted to distract the animal by shouting and waving his arms. This intervention proved tragically ineffective. The bear briefly turned its attention toward Kuznetsov, allowing Morozova to attempt crawling away. However, the bear quickly returned to Morozova, inflicting catastrophic injuries before Kuznetsov again tried to intervene. The bear then attacked Kuznetsov, causing severe lacerations to his torso and limbs before suddenly breaking off the attack and retreating into the forest. Other runners, hearing the commotion, cautiously returned to the scene. Pyotr Orlovsky, a military veteran with medical training, attempted emergency first aid while others used satellite phones to contact race officials. Despite these efforts, Morozova's injuries proved too severe. She succumbed before the medical helicopter arrived, approximately 40 minutes later. Kuznetsov, though critically injured with deep lacerations across his chest and a partially crushed shoulder, survived the initial attack. The Russian authorities' response was swift. The race was immediately canceled, and all participants were evacuated from the course. Regional wildlife officials, supported by local hunters familiar with the terrain, organized a tracking team to locate the bear, concerned that it might pose an ongoing threat to humans in the area. After a 30-hour search, they located and euthanized the animal approximately 12 kilometers from the attack site. Forensic examination of the bear revealed several interesting findings. The male bear was approximately 12 years old, relatively elderly for the species, and showed signs of dental disease and malnourishment. These factors potentially contributed to its unusual aggression, as the animal may have been experiencing pain and hunger, making it less tolerant of disturbances. The incident prompted an immediate review of safety protocols for sporting events in wilderness areas throughout Russia. The Amur regional government implemented new requirements mandating armed rangers at all such events, comprehensive wildlife surveys before course approval, and bear deterrent spray carried by all participants. Kuznetsov spent 11 weeks recovering in hospitals, first in Blagoveshchensk and later in St. Petersburg. Despite undergoing multiple surgeries, he retained permanent disabilities, including limited mobility in his right arm. He later advocated for wildlife conservation and wilderness safety education in a remarkable demonstration of resilience. For the family of Irina Morozova, the tragedy brought unimaginable grief and eventually led to legal action against the event organizers for allegedly insufficient safety measures. The lawsuit resulted in improved regulations for wilderness sporting events throughout Russia. The Kingan Mountain Marathon was permanently canceled, though a memorial race on a modified urban course was established in Blagoveshchensk to honor Morozova's memory. A small monument marking the site of the attack now serves as a somber reminder of the incident, bearing an inscription in both Russian and English that reads, "Nature's power demands our respect and caution." On the remote archipelago of Svalbard, Norway's Arctic frontier, where polar night casts the landscape in darkness for months and temperatures regularly plummet below -30 degrees Celsius, a hunting expedition took a harrowing turn in March 2007. This isolated territory, situated halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole, had long attracted adventurers, researchers, and hunters drawn to its pristine wilderness and unique wildlife. The archipelago was home to approximately 3,000 polar bears, more bears than human inhabitants, making it one of the world's most concentrated polar bear populations. Tomas Bergstrom, a 49-year-old experienced hunter and former military survival instructor from Tromsø, Norway, had organized a small expedition to track reindeer across the tundra of Spitsbergen, Svalbard's largest island. Bergstrom was well respected in Arctic hunting circles, having led similar regional trips for over 15 years. His team consisted of 3 other seasoned outdoorsmen, Henrik Lundgren, Mikkel Norgard, and Jonas Vestergaard, who all had considerable Arctic experience. The group had established a temporary base camp near Adventdalen, approximately 10 kilometers from the small settlement of Longyearbyen. This location had been strategically chosen for its known reindeer migration patterns, while supposedly maintaining a safe distance from documented polar bear territories. Despite stringent Norwegian regulations requiring all travelers outside settlements to carry firearms to protect against polar bears, the group had taken additional precautions, including installing tripwire warning systems around their camp perimeter. On March 17, 2007, the hunting party ventured eastward under the dim light of late Arctic winter, following fresh reindeer tracks. The weather conditions were challenging but not unusual for the season. The temperature hovered around -25 degrees Celsius, with moderate winds creating a significantly lower wind chill factor. Visibility was limited by the season's persistent twilight and occasional snow drifts picked up by gusting winds. According to later survivor testimony, Bergstrom had separated from the main group by approximately 50 meters as they worked across a small frozen valley. He spotted movement ahead and signaled to the others to remain in position while investigating. This standard hunting procedure would have catastrophic consequences within moments. Without warning, a large male polar bear emerged from behind a pressure ridge in the sea ice, a formation where ice sheets collide to create elevated barriers. The bear, later estimated to weigh nearly 600 kilograms, charged directly toward Bergstrom. Wildlife experts later theorized that the bear's unusually aggressive behavior likely resulted from hunger, as diminishing sea ice had reduced its ability to hunt seals, its primary food source. The other team members reported that Bergstrom had attempted to retrieve his rifle from his shoulder sling. Still, the bear's speed, capable of short bursts up to 40 kilometers per hour, gave him insufficient time to ready the weapon. The bear knocked Bergstrom violently to the ground before he could fire a shot, immediately mauling his left arm and shoulder. The hunting party responded quickly to their companion's desperate situation. Lundgren fired several warning shots into the air while advancing toward the attack scene, while Norgard and Vestergaard spread out to create multiple points of distraction. The bear, momentarily startled by the gunfire, paused its attack on Bergstrom, but did not retreat. When it resumed mauling its victim, Lundgren fired directly at the bear, striking it in the shoulder. The injured bear finally abandoned its attack and retreated across the ice, leaving Bergstrom severely wounded, but alive. Norgard, who possessed emergency medical training, immediately applied pressure bandages to stem the profuse bleeding from Bergstrom's mangled left arm, while Vestergaard activated their emergency satellite beacon. The hunting party's preparedness likely saved Bergstrom's life. Using a small portable sled they had brought for transporting game, they secured their injured companion and began the arduous journey back toward Longyearbyen. After covering approximately 3 kilometers under extremely difficult conditions, they were met by an emergency response team dispatched from the settlement via snowmobile. Bergstrom was initially treated at a hospital in Longyearbyen before being airlifted to a university hospital in North Norway in Tromsø, where surgeons worked 11 hours to save his arm. Despite their efforts, the damage proved too extensive, and a partial amputation below the elbow was necessary. Additionally, Bergstrom required extensive reconstructive surgery to repair damage to his shoulder, chest, and face. Norwegian wildlife authorities located and euthanized the wounded bear the following day, approximately 7 kilometers from the attack site. Examination revealed the animal was severely undernourished, with minimal fat reserves that would normally sustain it through periods of limited hunting success. This finding contributed to ongoing research regarding the impact of climate change on polar bear behavior and human-bear conflict in the Arctic region. The incident sparked renewed debate about Arctic tourism and hunting regulations in Norway. While some environmental groups advocated for stricter limitations on human activity in polar bear territories, others emphasized the attack's connection to changing ecological conditions affecting bear behavior. For Bergstrom, recovery proved to be a lengthy process involving multiple surgeries and extensive physical therapy. 8 months after the attack, he began speaking publicly about his experience, becoming an unexpected advocate for Arctic conservation efforts. In a widely publicized interview with Norwegian Broadcasting Channel, Bergstrom remarked that he harbored no resentment toward the bear, acknowledging that both he and the animal had been caught in circumstances beyond their control. Human adventurers and wild predators increasingly forced into the same diminishing spaces by a rapidly changing Arctic environment. The following year, Bergstrom established the Svalbard Wildlife Awareness Foundation, an organization dedicated to educating Arctic travelers about wildlife safety while supporting research into the effects of climate change on Arctic ecosystems. In the pristine wilderness of Alaska's Kenai Peninsula, where crystalline rivers carve through ancient forests before emptying into the Gulf of Alaska, a peaceful fly fishing expedition transformed into a life-or-death struggle during the early spring of 2016. The peninsula, known for its exceptional salmon runs and consequently healthy bear population, had long been a destination for fishing enthusiasts, willing to venture into more remote areas for the promise of unspoiled waters and record catches. Benjamin Ben Hargrove and Matthew Matt Sinclair, childhood friends from Portland, Oregon, both 34 years old, had planned their Alaskan fishing trip for nearly 2 years. Lifelong fishing enthusiasts had selected a particularly secluded stretch of the Kili River, a tributary renowned among experienced anglers for its impressive rainbow trout population. Still, it was seldom visited due to its difficult access. This remoteness required a float plane drop-off and a 3-mile hike through dense forest to reach their intended fishing spot. The area was historically significant as a traditional fishing ground for the indigenous Dena'ina people for thousands of years, before becoming part of the modern sport fishing circuit. The surrounding ecosystem maintained a delicate balance, with salmon runs supporting one of North America's densest brown bear populations. Despite this known bear presence, the early spring timing of their trip had been deliberately chosen as a period when bears typically remained less active, still lethargic from winter hibernation. On April 28, 2016, after their second successful day of fishing, Hargrove and Sinclair were wading in a shallow section of the river approximately half a mile from their camp. The weather had been unseasonably warm for several weeks, potentially affecting bear behavior throughout the region. According to Sinclair's later account, they had caught and released nearly a dozen impressive rainbow trout throughout the morning, with Hargrove having just landed a particularly large specimen estimated at 26 inches. As Hargrove released this fish back into the current, Sinclair noticed movement along the tree line approximately 30 yards downstream. A large grizzly bear, later estimated to weigh around 700 pounds, emerged from the forest edge. The bear initially appeared to be foraging along the riverbank, possibly attracted by the scent of fish in the area. The two fishermen, educated in wilderness safety, immediately recognized the potential danger of their situation. Wildlife experts would later determine the bear was likely a male that had emerged from hibernation earlier than typical due to the warm spring temperatures. The bear would have been particularly hungry and potentially more aggressive than usual, with natural food sources still limited early in the season. Rather than quietly retreating as recommended in most bear encounters, the fishermen made a critical error in judgment. Hargrove, believing they needed to establish dominance to prevent an attack, began shouting while raising his fishing rod above his head to appear larger. Contrary to recommended protocols for unexpected bear encounters, this behavior may have triggered the bear's defensive instincts. The grizzly immediately charged, covering the distance between them with alarming speed. Hargrove, still standing in knee-deep water, had no chance to escape. The bear struck him with tremendous force, knocking him completely underwater. As Hargrove struggled to regain his footing, Sinclair acted on pure instinct. He waded toward the shoreline, grabbed a substantial driftwood branch approximately 4 feet long and 3 inches in diameter, and charged back toward the bear, which was now attempting to drag his friend toward the shore. With adrenaline fueling his actions, Sinclair swung the improvised weapon with full force, striking the bear across its back and shoulders. The unexpected counterattack momentarily confused the grizzly, which released its grip on Hargrove's fishing vest and turned to face this new threat. This brief interruption gave Hargrove the crucial seconds to scramble away from the bear's immediate reach. The bear, now facing both men, appeared to reassess the situation. After a tense standoff lasting approximately 20 seconds, which Sinclair later described as the longest moment of my entire life, the grizzly turned and lumbered back into the forest, occasionally glancing back as if ensuring the perceived threat was not pursuing it. Once certain the bear had retreated, Sinclair helped Hargrove to shore. Though both men had survived the encounter, they had not emerged unscathed. Hargrove had suffered deep lacerations to his right thigh where the bear's claws had penetrated his waders, and multiple contusions from being thrown into the rocky riverbed. Sinclair had sustained a dislocated shoulder from the force of swinging the heavy branch. Using their wilderness first aid training, they stabilized their injuries before undertaking the difficult 3-mile hike back to their designated pickup point. Hargrove's leg wound required Sinclair to fashion a makeshift crutch from a tree branch, extending their journey to nearly 5 hours. They activated their emergency satellite beacon approximately halfway through the trek, resulting in their float plane pilot arriving ahead of schedule to evacuate them to medical facilities in Soldotna. Following the incident, Alaska authority officials investigated the attack site but chose not to pursue the bear, as its behavior was deemed defensive rather than predatory. However, the authority temporarily closed that section of the river to fishing while conducting a broader assessment of bear activity in the area. The encounter served as a powerful learning experience for both men. 6 months after recovering from their injuries, Hargrove and Sinclair collaborated with wildlife officials to produce an educational video about proper bear safety protocols for fishermen in Alaska. The video, titled "Rivers We Share," emphasized the importance of carrying bear spray, making noise while hiking, properly storing food and fish, and most importantly, reacting appropriately when unexpectedly encountering bears in their natural habitat. What began as a near tragedy transformed into an opportunity for education. As Sinclair noted during a presentation at their local fishing club in Portland, their experience reinforced that humans are visitors in wilderness areas, where respecting wildlife and understanding proper response protocols can mean the difference between life and death. The rugged, expansive wilderness of a national park in northwest Denver in north-central Colorado had long attracted nature enthusiasts seeking to experience the breathtaking alpine landscapes and diverse wildlife. The park represented one of America's premier wilderness destinations, with its soaring peaks, pristine forests, and abundant wildlife, including elk, moose, and approximately 25-30 black bears. The park offered spectacular beauty and the inherent risks of true wilderness. The area had a rich historical significance, having been home to Ute and Arapaho tribes for thousands of years before becoming federally protected land, and many of its trails followed ancient indigenous pathways through the mountains. In early June 2011, the park was experiencing an unusual seasonal pattern. An exceptionally wet spring had delayed some wildlife feeding patterns, while suddenly soaring temperatures accelerated snowmelt in the higher elevations. These conditions created atypical wildlife movement throughout the region, with bears emerging from hibernation to find their traditional early-season food sources disrupted. Park rangers had noted increased bear activity near popular trails, but had not yet issued special warnings beyond standard bear safety protocols. These environmental anomalies would only become relevant in retrospect. Sarah Winstead and Michael Mike Thornton, recently engaged graduate students from a university in Colorado, had carefully planned a 3-day backpacking trip through the park's less-traveled eastern wilderness. Winstead, studying environmental science focusing on alpine ecosystem resilience, and Thornton, completing his master's degree in geology specializing in the National Park Formation, were both experienced hikers with multiple backcountry excursions throughout the American West on their resumes. Between them, they had accumulated over 15 years of wilderness experience and had completed certified wilderness first aid training the previous year. They had obtained the necessary permits, researched their route extensively, and packed appropriate gear, including bear-resistant food containers as required by park regulations. Their meticulously planned route followed the North Inlet Trail before veering onto less maintained paths toward Thunder Lake, a pristine alpine lake at 10,574 feet. The couple had specifically chosen this route for its remarkable biodiversity and relative solitude, preferring to experience the park away from more heavily trafficked areas. On June 8th, their second day of hiking, they had covered approximately 7 miles through increasingly remote terrain, characterized by dense lodgepole pine forests, interspersed with small meadows bursting with early summer wildflowers. The weather was ideal. Clear skies with temperatures in the mid-70s Fahrenheit, with gentle breezes carrying the scent of pine and alpine flowers. According to Winstead's later statement to park authorities, they had encountered no other hikers since early that morning, creating a sense of peaceful solitude that both valued in their wilderness experiences. What the couple remained unaware of, however, was that they had acquired an observer, a medium-sized male black bear, approximately 4 years old and weighing around 250 pounds, had detected their presence and begun tracking them through the forest. Wildlife biologists would later theorize that the bear had likely been attracted by the scent of protein bars and dehydrated meals in their backpacks, despite these being properly stored in bear-resistant containers. The bear's unusual interest may have been exacerbated by the seasonal food stress, with its normal early summer diet of fresh spring vegetation and insect larvae being delayed by the abnormal weather patterns. The bear shadowed the hikers for nearly 2 miles without their knowledge, occasionally losing their scent before relocating them. This stalking behavior, unusual for black bears, which typically avoid human contact, suggested the animal may have previously obtained food from humans, creating a dangerous association between people and easy meals. Park incident reports would later reveal 3 documented cases of improper food storage at nearby campsites in the preceding month, potentially contributing to this behavioral anomaly. At approximately 3:45 p.m., as Winstead and Thornton navigated a particularly dense section of forest approaching a small alpine meadow dotted with columbines and Indian paintbrush, they finally became aware of their pursuer. Winstead reported hearing heavy footsteps crunching through underbrush behind them, a sound distinctly different from the lighter movements of deer or elk commonly encountered in the area. When they turned to investigate, the bear was less than 20 yards away and closing rapidly, moving with the determined gait of a predator rather than the typically cautious approach of bears encountering humans. Thornton instructed Winstead to slowly back away in the critical seconds that followed. At the same time, he attempted to appear larger by raising his arms and hiking poles above his head, standard protocol for deterring black bear aggression. The bear hesitated momentarily, rising briefly on its hind legs to better assess the potential threat, before dropping down and charging directly at them. Thornton, positioned slightly ahead of Winstead, absorbed the brunt of the attack as the bear collided with him, knocking him violently to the ground with a force that Winstead would later describe as like watching someone get hit by a furry car. The impact drove the air from Thornton's lungs and sent his backpack flying several feet away. The bear immediately began mauling him, its powerful jaws clamping onto his left shoulder. At the same time, its claws inflicted deep lacerations across his chest and arms as he attempted to protect his face and throat. Despite the overwhelming pain and shock, Thornton maintained enough presence of mind to curl into a protective ball, covering his neck and head with his arms, as he had learned in wilderness safety courses. Winstead, displaying remarkable composure despite the horrifying scene before her, immediately deployed the canister of bear spray she kept accessible in her backpack's side pocket, a safety precaution the couple had always maintained but never expected to use. She directed a thick cloud of the capsaicin-based deterrent toward the bear, which had begun inflicting serious lacerations to Thornton's chest and shoulders. The orange cloud enveloped both the bear and, unfortunately, Thornton as well, adding chemical irritation to his already substantial injuries. The spray's effect was not immediate, but ultimately proved effective. After several agonizing seconds during which the bear continued its attack on the prone hiker, the irritating chemicals finally penetrated its eyes and respiratory system. The bear retreated several yards, shaking its head and pawing at its face in obvious distress, emitting grunts and snorts that echoed through the otherwise silent forest. Using this opportunity, Winstead rushed to Thornton's side, fighting through her respiratory discomfort from the dispersed spray. Though severely injured with deep claw wounds across his torso and a dislocated shoulder from the initial impact, Thornton remained conscious, his training helping him maintain composure despite significant blood loss. Winstead helped him to his feet, and together they began retreating slowly, maintaining visual contact with the bear, which continued showing signs of discomfort from the spray. After putting approximately 50 yards between them and the temporarily incapacitated bear, Winstead activated an emergency satellite beacon she carried for wilderness emergencies, another precaution that would prove life-saving. They then began the difficult process of moving toward the nearest ranger station, approximately 4 miles distant. Despite his injuries, Thornton insisted on moving under his own power as long as possible. He was concerned that remaining stationary might invite a secondary attack if the bear recovered and resumed tracking them. Aligned by the emergency signal, park rangers dispatched a search and rescue team that located the injured hikers approximately 2 hours later. By this time, Thornton had weakened considerably from blood loss and shock, requiring Winstead to support much of his weight. He was evacuated via helicopter to a medical center in Loveland, where he underwent surgery to repair extensive tissue damage and a fractured clavicle. Following the incident, park officials temporarily closed several trails in the vicinity, while wildlife specialists tracked and ultimately relocated the bear to a more remote region of the park. Examination of scat found near the attack site revealed the bear had been consuming a largely natural diet, suggesting its unusual behavior may have been influenced by the seasonal food stress rather than habituation to human food sources as initially suspected. The attack prompted the authorities to launch an expanded education campaign about black bear safety, emphasizing the importance of carrying bear spray, recognizing bear behavior, and properly storing food when camping. For Winstead and Thornton, the harrowing experience profoundly reshaped their relationship with the wilderness. It did not diminish their love for wild places, but deepened their respect for nature's unpredictable power. The encounter served as a sobering reminder that even the most peaceful-looking landscapes carry risks, and that preparation and awareness are essential for coexistence. Their future adventures would be guided by caution, reverence, and hard-earned wisdom.